evening, everybody. Welcome to the first in the series of webinars that we're doing with really experienced, capable, and well money managers. And I asked Ambit because I wanted to begin with Ambit. I fought with my team and got Ambit first because their portfolio has been one of the most resilient ones. They introduced a concept in Indian investing known as the coffee can. So we had growth, we had value. Coffee can was an approach that they got, and the concept has gotten quite popular. In the common perception, Coffee Can is one of their most famous portfolio, but they also have two other portfolios, Good and Clean and Emerging Giants, which are greats in their own right. So I won't keep the stage further. I will hand it over to Mr. Siddharth Rastogi, and along with him is Manish Jain. Manish Jain is the fund manager for Coffee Can portfolio, and Siddharth Rastogi is the MD at Ambit Asset Management. Over to you, sirs.
Thank you, Sankalpo. Thank you for having me on this session. Very, very challenging times, but as I always say, great challenge, great crisis, even greater opportunity. I'll talk about the investing, I'll talk about equities, I'll talk about everything which pertains to you and to everyone's life. But before that, let's delve into the future. Future is very, very interesting. But how do we know future? Tough question. Hence, go into the past. And I'll start with a very, very short story of the past. 1914, Franz Ferdinand and his wife. Franz Ferdinand, by the way, was the Emperor of Austro-Hungarian Empire. He and his wife, they were going in a big cavalcade to address a town hall. There, during their journey, a Serbian hurled a bomb. The bomb hit the car and shifted onto the next car, and it exploded. 13 people injured, 1 died. Both king and the queen, they were absolutely unhurt. They continued with their cavalcade, they finished their work, they finished with their town hall. And they were supposed to come back and address another town hall, but they decided not to do it. Instead, what they did is they decided to go back and check on the people who have got hurt because of the bomb. And they gave the directions to their driver. And there was a big cavalcade behind it. There was so much of tension. There was so much of chaos all over the place. In utter confusion, the driver took the wrong turn. He was supposed to take the next turn for the hospital where the injured were placed. Unfortunately, he took a turn just before that. As soon as he took the turn, there was another Serbian who was standing there with a gun in his hand, point blank, 3 shots, both of them die immediately. As soon as this event takes place, Austro-Hungarian Empire attacked Serbia. Russia at that point in time, which was an ally of Serbia, attacks the Austro-Hungarian Empire in turn. Germany, which was an ally of Austro-Hungarian Empire, attacks Russia back. And there we go. The First World War begins. At the end of the First World War, 4 years later, 2 crore dead, 2.1 crore injured. One wrong turn, one mistake, ladies and gentlemen, just one mistake, and you are doomed. And exactly the same thing happened today. Exactly the same thing happened today. Some people are cribbing, some people are crying, some people are unhappy that there is a fund house because of which the investments have been stuck. Hard-earned money is stuck. Right, wrong, I don't know. But shouldn't investors be cautious about when the interest rates are lower. Still, if somebody is delivering you higher yields, shouldn't you be cautious? One wrong mistake can cost you your life savings. Let's delve a little bit about this pandemic. What's happening with the pandemic? How are we placed in the equity markets, so on and so forth, right? That's the reason you guys are here for. Every pandemic has two connotations, have two undertones. One is medical, one is economic or financial. Medical, if one has to look at the history, every 200, 250 years, and this is from 350 BC onwards. So almost 2,500 years back also, we used to have pandemics. Some were driven by bacteria. Every 250 years, there was a plague, which was caused by bacteria. And then there was cholera. And in 1887, 88, 89, there was a viral infection. Then you had 1918, the famous Spanish flu, H1N1, which impacted almost 1/3 of humanity and took over 2 crore lives. Took over 2 crore lives. So keep in mind, guys, this data is very, very important. 1918, Spanish flu, by the way, didn't originate from Spain. It originated from somewhere in Europe. Nobody knows its origin. At that point in time, the world population was 180 crore. 50 crore infections in a span of 2 years. It started somewhere in Jan 1918. It ended in December 1919. In a span of 24 months, 50 crore infections and closer to 2 crore died. In US alone, 675,000, so 6,75,000 people were casualty. After that, there was another pandemic, 1957. Then there was another one, 2009. The repeat version of 1918 happened in 2009. Almost 1.5 crore people were infected in 2009, but nobody knew about it because vaccine could quickly be delivered. By the time it reached US, vaccine was already found. Unfortunately, for COVID-19, there isn't a vaccine. People are talking, people are trying to find out, seems sometimes away. So how do you first, before we even talk about the economics of it, before we talk about the economic impact, markets and so on and so forth, first you have to figure out when would we get out of COVID-19? Because one thing is for sure, unless we get out of COVID-19, there is no normalcy. We will remain scared, we will remain petrified, we will not behave in our original self. How long will it take? Till we have herd immunity. Herd immunity can only come with 3 things. Mass infection, either you have mass infection, which we are nowhere close to. We are only close to 26, 27 lakhs and the world population is closer to 760 crore. So we are nowhere even close to that number. Second is, we find a cure. We don't have a cure. We don't have a medicine. The third is, we find a vaccine. Since COVID-19's virus is changing its strain on a constant basis, to find a vaccine itself is difficult. So how long will it last? My most optimistic guess, my most optimistic study says that it's not going to be before 12 months to 18 months. So at least it will last for at least 12 months to 18 months. And the bigger fear is that every pandemic which has happened in the history has shown there is a second wave. And my reckoning is that second wave, one has to be very, very cautious because the second wave is going to hit somewhere from November, December, Jan. November 20 to Jan 21. So one has to be really, really cautious. So that's on the medical part of it. Let's come on the economic part of it. And for that, everybody is wondering what will happen to the stock markets, what will happen to the economy. So just by the thumb rule, almost 30 to 35% of the businesses are shut. In some places it is 50%, in some places it's 80%. On an average, bare minimum 30 to 35%. And there is at least a 20% job loss. There's a 20% job loss which is expected worldwide for the total working population. But there are green shoots. Mind it, guys, there are green shoots. And for that, I'll take you through a very interesting chart and then I'll come back. So if you guys can see this chart, this 2 years, 50 crore infection, 2 crore dead. The interesting part is the number. So this is US, this is Dow Jones Industrial Average. 1918, the US stock market grew by 10.5% and the real US GDP growth was 9%. 1919, obviously the impact could be seen and it was negligible. But the stock market jumped by 30-odd%, 30.5-odd%. 1920, when the entire impact could be felt, the stock market corrected. 21, it moved up when the real US GDP was negative. And after that, you can see the GDP moved up and the stock market also moved up. So what I'm trying to imply by these data points, it's very, very simple. Stock markets and economy, they don't move in tandem. They just don't move in tandem. If you think that stock market exactly takes the real data of how much is the GDP and then it moves up and then people decide that we should put in the money, that's not the way the stock markets work. The stock market works on future, it works on the hope. So coming back to the economy, what will be the impact? The impact will be quite severe. But as I mentioned, there are some green shoots. So let's talk about the green shoots. First, in 1918, almost 45 to 50% of the GDP in US used to come from manufacturing and balance from agriculture. Today, if I look at the world economy, 66%, or to be exact, 63.7% of the total world GDP comes from services sector. 50% people, 48.9% people are employed in services sector worldwide of the working population. What does that mean? It essentially means that even if 50% of the services can be rendered sitting at home, the way you are doing, the way I am doing, the way Sankalpo is doing, and the way PMS AIF is doing, by bringing better choices of investments to you, the GDP keeps progressing. It is not halted. And hence, I do not see such severe impact on the economy as well. So that's one part of the story. Second part of the story, the guys who were big, the guys who were not vulnerable, the guys who were invincible, they will become vulnerable. Big corporate will not mean that you are not vulnerable. Hence, businesses which had existed in Nifty for last 7, 8, 9 years, some of them in next 5 years will become history. The new businesses will emerge. Nifty anyways churns almost 30 to 35% of the businesses every 10 years. This time around, the churn will be even higher, even faster. And the smart businesses, the new businesses which will emerge, they will emerge on efficiency, on productivity, on cutting down the flab, on ensuring higher and superior working capital mechanics. And that will be the new normal. That will be the new norm. Businesses will prosper. Businesses will emerge victorious. but they have to reinvent. And that's what is going to happen in the near term. I'll spend a couple of minutes also that how should the India story pan out, because a lot of people believe that India is going to be largely resilient from this pandemic, and I have the same thesis, and it's very simple, it's very intuitive. Every rains, and you can go back, you can just do Google, you don't have to even ask me for the data. Every rains in the metros specifically, there are almost 400 to 500 lives which go away because of either cholera, chikungunya, or maybe because of diarrhea, because of malaria, because of dengue. All these are viral. All these are viral infections. These are all driven by viruses. Plus, when we all Indians are born somewhere in India, we are given BCG vaccine. And this BCG vaccine is essentially against the tuberculosis, which is again potent enough to save us from the extreme hazard of this virus. While BCG vaccine has been curbed in the Western world for last almost 35 to 40 years. They don't know what is diarrhea. They don't know what is diarrhea in infants. We all hear about ORS. We all have ORS packets in our houses, right? For adult, for children, for younger babies, for infants, for everyone, right? There is nothing like diarrhea in the West. Hence, they don't know virus, and hence the impact is going to be far more severe, far more dramatic. What is the bigger challenge for India? These are some of the greatest points for India. And India has a younger population. India has a better youth, better demographic advantage. But what is the negative? The negative for India is that we are still capital starved. We are still looking for capital from the Western world. We still have a large deficit to fill. We still have very shallow capital markets. We have very shallow debt markets. And that's the negative. All the problems which are emanating today, or which have been emanating for last 2 years for the Indian economy, is only because of the money supply, the availability of credit in the economy. And that will pose even a bigger and a serious challenge. Hence, what should one do? Very simple. Look at businesses which are unleveraged. Look at businesses which are not leveraged. Look at businesses which have dominant market share. Look at businesses which have survived through the cycles. Look at businesses which do not get impacted when the crude is $2 or $130. Earlier, I used to say $35 or $40. Now I can say $0 as well, right? So interesting times. So businesses which do not get impacted by all that, those are the businesses you should look to create wealth. Because remember, these businesses have seen multiple cycles, multiple disruptions, multiple catastrophes. There's war, famine. It can be floods. It can be political unrest. All have been witnessed by India and some of these companies. And if you invest in these companies, you do not have to worry. You absolutely do not have to worry how these companies will come out victorious out of this pandemic. So I will wind up my talk here, and I will put Manish Jain, who's the Ambit Coffee Can Fund Manager, to run through the basic nuances and why we are still victorious. Because he's the guy who's on the driver's seat. He's the guy who's driving it hard, and he's the guy who took the call to get into the staples. He took the call to get into the smallest ticket size businesses. He took the call not to get carried away by a lot of pharma names, by a lot of other stuff. When rest everybody was gung-ho, Manish was researching. Manish was projecting how the future would look like. So over to you, Manish.
So thank you, Siddharth. You flatter me, but I think it's basically a team effort. Everybody contributes to making Ambit, what it is. But definitely one thing that, I agree with, and I think Siddharth here will agree with me, is that, it's the tough times which actually separates the men from the boys. And if you look at the last 2, maybe 3 months, now Coffee Can I know has been fairly well known of philosophy, but it's essentially the last 2, 3 months when it has stood the test of time, and it has delivered when everybody else around have been falling like nine pins, right? And that's the strength that Ambit brings to the table, and that's the strength that Coffee Can, as a philosophy, brings to the table. That when the going is good, everybody makes money, right? It's when the tough get, when the times are tough, right, that the tough gets going, and that's essentially what Coffee Can is all about. See, one thing that comes to my mind is that why are we today the only fund that has delivered a positive return in financial year 2020, right? Very few have managed it. Most have been negative by a very wide margin. I think the simple answer to that is discipline. We tend to do simple things really well with a lot of discipline. We don't get carried away with momentum a lot. We try not to time the market too much. And the philosophy, right, that we bring to the table, be it the Coffee Can philosophy, be it the good and clean philosophy that we have, they are cast in stone, right? And nothing can deter us away from that philosophy. And like Siddharth said, there have been so many money-making opportunities that have come our way, especially in the financial sector, especially in the pharma sector, some even in discretionary consumption, which we have walked away from, right? Which you'll see those names being present in every second portfolio that you'll see around. And those stocks are today trading at a much lower price and a much lower valuation than they were about 13 months, 12 months back when we took a call to walk away from those names, right? So when the market was bullish, it looked all very nice and hunky-dory that, we were kind of delivering a stable return in the range that we promised, but others were having a, gala time. But today, that high beta is coming back to bite you, right? When Coffee Can still remains fairly stable. When I look at the performance, we are about 28, 29% ahead of the market in financial year 2020. And pretty much similar in 2-year performance and a 3-year performance. In March alone, I think we'll be probably 10, 11% ahead of the market, March to April. And that is a testimony of what, Coffee Can is all about. And that is the biggest difference between Coffee Can and all the other funds, right? Which is basically being simple. And we always believe that it's very simple to be complicated, but it's very, very complicated to remain simple in life. We have a philosophy in life and we stick to it come what may. Now, Coffee Can is a philosophy which is fairly well known, right? That we look at the 360-degree view when we are trying to invest in a stock. We look at the past, we look at the present, and we look at the future. But coronavirus was something that nobody anticipated, right? Nobody was able to foresee it. So when, that lockdown happened, the first thing we tried to do was to analyze the portfolio that does it really stand the test of times in these tough times. If coronavirus lockdown was to last in India for a 6-month or maybe a year extended period, will the Coffee Can, portfolio survive? Because if the Coffee Can portfolio survives, and this is something you need to understand, that the focus now shifts away from growth intermittently for the next couple of years at least. It is more about survival. It's more about staying afloat, and people who are able to stay afloat in the next 12 months are going to be the ones who are going to thrive post it. The big are going to get bigger. They are going to get more and more profitable. And in that context, we wanted to see whether the Coffee Can portfolio will survive or not, right? So we analyzed the balance sheets very closely. We analyzed the cash positions very, very closely. Fortunately, none of our companies have any kind of debt whatsoever at all. And we tried to figure out that if the lockdown was to last 6 months, how many of our companies were going to survive? And the answer is 13 on 13, all 13. Anywhere between 10 to 11 months to 40 months of zero production, no revenue at all, zero revenues. All these companies will survive. That's the strength of Coffee Can, right? That essentially tells us that we are doing the right thing. We are adhering to the philosophy. And that's where I think, we get separated from everybody else. And that is why I'm super confident that as long as we are able to stay afloat, as long as we are able to stick to the coffee can philosophy and pick the right kind of stocks for you, the right kind of businesses for you, right? I shouldn't be using the term stocks. We hate that name in our PMS. We use businesses, right? If you are able to partner with the right kind of businesses for you, the returns will come. Returns, I always tell people, is that it's a byproduct. It's not the primary aim. The primary aim of any investor is to assess and try to figure out what the purpose of investing is. If you have a liquid money requirement, right, that money should go into a liquid asset, which is going to be readily available to you, right? And your long-term investment should be in long-term assets. So if you stay true to the purpose of investing, the returns are automatically going to follow through. So try to be simple, try to invest in high quality names. These are great times, like Siddharth said, these are opportunities, right? And at Ambit, we always believe that, the worst of the times are actually the best times to build great portfolios in great businesses, right? And that is what we should all strive to do. Look at good quality companies with great corporate governance practices and build those portfolios from a 5 to 10 year perspective. Believe me that the wealth that is going to get created is going to be exponential. So with that short address, I'm going to stop here, and I think we'll devote more time to Q&A rather than me continuing to talk.
Manish, that is clever. So we put more time to Q&A, and the first question is very interesting, and it's not it's a very basic question that you spoke about the attributes of the coffee can portfolio, touching very little on the philosophy of the coffee can portfolio. So if either of you, I would prefer you take this question, Manish, can explain the philosophy of the coffee can portfolio for the benefit of our listeners today. Over to you.
It's fairly simple. There is no rocket science to it. But like I said, it's very, very complicated to remain simple in life. The coffee can philosophy simply strives to build a portfolio from a long-term perspective. For the benefit of all the participants, understand that coffee can is a vehicle for wealth creation. It is not an income generation platform. What we try to do is to take 100 rupees from you and make it 600 or 700 over a 10-year time frame, and not deliver 125 or 135. So the vision with which Coffee Can has been built and established is essentially in sync with that. Whenever we try to assess a business that we want to partner with or we want to invest into, we take a longer term horizon. We think like promoters, we think like owners, we think like investors who are investing in that business, and we don't necessarily buy stocks up. What do we look at? We look at the past. We believe that the history is a mirror into the future. The way promoters have behaved in the past, the way businesses have reacted to situations in the past are going to be the way people are going to react again and behave again in the future as well. So we take a minimum 10, maximum 20-year view as far as the history is concerned. And we try to see how consistent the company is, how much of a wealth have they created consistently for all the stakeholders, right? They should at least be delivering a consistent double-digit growth as far as revenue is concerned, and 15% ROE, which essentially means economic value added being positive for the last 10 years out of 10. And once you have that, the portfolio construct starts. That essentially gets into the first leg, which is we call the shortlist. And from there, it is out of those 37, 38 names that you start constructing the portfolio, and then life gets much simpler. Understand that I've not talked about earnings so far. I've not talked about valuation so far at all. So it's a very top-down approach. What we secondly look at is corporate governance and quality of management. And finally, the future, which is essentially how the industry is going to behave and grow in the next 10 years. What kind of a leadership position that the company has? What are the competitive advantages that you enjoy? And how much of an ability you have to react to upcoming technological challenges. Once you meet all these 7 criteria, you are eligible to be a part of Coffee Can. Not necessarily that you will be, because the risk reward from a long-term perspective needs to be balanced. So there have been so many stocks where we believe that the businesses are great, but because the risk versus reward was not favorable, we've walked out of those opportunities as well. And probably now is the time to reassess that theory. And the last one being the ability to survive in these tough times. So that's essentially what Coffee Can philosophy is all about.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that was a good explanation of the Coffee Can portfolio. And now on the next question, I want both of you all to answer. Siddharth, you too, and Manish, you too. The question is, how is Coffee Can different from a very close competitor? I'll not name who, but we all know who I'm referring to. So, so so that is, I am putting myself and you guys both in a fix, but I will want you both to answer this, please.
No, I would request Manish to. So Manish has a great research background. He has been with us for he has been there for with us for almost 1.5 2 years, and he has almost 15, 16, 17 years of research background. So great guy. I'm a true Ambitian because I've completed 10 years. So let me answer it in a very simple manner. So you guys have heard of a country known as Pakistan? Yes, no, yes, right? You guys have heard of a country known as Bangladesh, right? They both emerged, they both originated from our motherland, from India, right? They both are pursuing their own passion. They both picked up things which India taught them for many, many years. And we wish both of them great luck, great success. Do we even consider them as competitors? No. India is too mighty, India is too big. We are too generous at heart. And exactly the same way, it's Ambit. There are teams who have been nurtured, grown. They have prospered in Ambit, at Ambit. And they have chosen their own path. We wish them all the best. We wish them all the luck. We actually give them all the knowledge as well. Because all the knowledge was gained during their term, during everybody's term. I was part of it. There were 50, 70, 80 colleagues of mine who were part of it. We all originated Coffee Can philosophy together. And this was originated way back, somewhere in the West, 200 years before. We all tried and put our heads together. We all tried to find, can it fit into Indian context? And we came out with a solution. Then some of our colleagues decided to part ways, and we wish them best of luck. How Pakistan parted ways, we wish them best of luck in 1947. Bangladesh, we got them independence, and we wish them best of luck. The same thing, it's for them. So there is, but what happened? What happened after 1947? The differences started emerging. India still is a secular country. We still have 18 to 20 crore Muslims who are living with a brotherly feeling towards all the other religions. Pakistan may not accept it, right? We are happy the way. We are still blessing them. And that's exactly our feeling. They are not our competitors because we are the originators. Even if they become bigger, even if they become smaller, it's best of luck to them. It's only best of luck to them.
Okay. Now I will take Manish's answer on this, please.
Let's come back to the markets.
Yes.
Markets. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question. Okay, Manish has something to say. We'll take it quickly.
No, I think we should stick to the markets.
Okay, we'll stick to the markets.
That is the reason that's the reason I gave this answer, so that people understand that originator always will be larger and always will be bigger. Please go on.
One thing all of you guys need to understand is that Coffee Can is a philosophy. It's a way of investment, right? What Ambit is selling to you is essentially a way of investing. It's a philosophy, right? Returns are never cast in stone. They may come, they may not come. But to stay true to the philosophy is very difficult, right? And that is essentially the difference. When you start chasing return, when you start looking at short-term goals rather than the bigger picture, the longer-term picture, initially things look very nice. But when the shit hits the roof, it's when things start falling apart. So that is when you decide, who's the, like Siddharth said, who's the father and who's the son, right? The father will always remain the father. The son will never become the father. And that's essentially what the difference is that when you look at the performance of all our competitors, right? Not just one. Why give somebody so much of a special importance? But when you look at our performance versus everybody else's performance, and just not take Coffee Can, but all three of our funds, right? Make a fair comparison and see who compares. I don't think too many people actually do across the board all PMS schemes, across all market cap requirements. And I think that's essentially the message over here is to stay simple, stay true to the philosophy, stay true to the idea of the investment with which you got into it, and it will always yield results. And that is what we do differently than everybody else. And that's I think, our USP.
That's very well answered, Manish. So now we come back to the markets, fortunately. So the next question that I have with me is, are we ignoring white shoots, or are we ignoring negatives in the market right now? What do you think, with a lot of brokerages coming out and saying that India will not grow at all, or might degrow, or where stocks are still hitting 52-week highs now? So what do you think? Are we ignoring negatives, or are we ignoring white shoots? So up to you.
Let me answer this into a very simple thing. Markets are driven by three simple things. One is earnings per share. Okay. The second thing, price to earning multiples. Third thing, liquidity. Now, clearly, earnings for broader markets, for the broader indices, have been totally written off. So most of the brokerages, and we also are quite cognizant that this year, FY21, will be quite a write-off. There may be potentially 1 or 2 quarters of degrowth, which one can see, or it can be a muted growth. It can be 0.1 negative or 0.1 positive for next 2 quarters. And after that, there can be a minuscule growth of a 0.5% to 1% to 1.8%. That's about it. It will be very, very tepid. Hence, we are not expecting any major bonanza. Okay. So from the earnings of the Nifty or from the broader markets, but keep in mind, Coffee Can businesses will still deliver reasonable amount of earnings. And the reason why, because these are B2C companies, these are the companies which are in lower ticket size consumption. They are the ones which will remain in demand despite of the lockdown and large numbers of it. So that's one part of the story. The second is which is the future earnings. Now, a lot of companies will not be focused on the future earnings because you don't know when this pandemic will end. And as I mentioned, it can last anything from a 12 months to a 18 months period. And if this pandemic extends, then the future earnings will also be in jeopardy. The third thing is the liquidity. So keep in mind that liquidity is one of the significant drivers in the stock market. And if you guys remember the chart which I showed, and another data comparison I'll explain to you is, in 2008, the size of the US economy was closer to $14.5 trillion. When the financial meltdown started, there was a stimulus package which was given closer to $676 billion, which by the end of 2008 became $1 trillion. By the end of 2010, because it took 3 years for the US government and Fed to ensure that the entire thing is out of woods, they pumped in $2.4 trillion. So $2.4 trillion of stimulus when the total size of the economy in US was $14.5 trillion. Today, the size of the economy, US economy, is closer to $21 trillion. Directly or indirectly, keep in mind, guys, directly or indirectly, $6.6 trillion have already been given as stimulus to 1/3 of the economy, over 1/3 of the economy. The sense one is getting that these numbers are just the beginning. You can expect as high as $10 trillion of stimulus which can come into the US economy. Japan, $1 trillion stimulus with a $5.6 trillion economy, right? So it's a humongous amount of money, and money will always chase quality assets. So that's one. Second, interest rates are 0 to negative. In Europe, they are negative. In US, it's 0 to 0.25. There can be further rate cuts, which will induce people not to save money. But what the smart guys, what the smart institutions will do, they will borrow money at the negative interest rates and will invest into the risky emerging market equities. Risky emerging market equities. And that's how the flow will be driven. The reason we saw the fall, was $8.4 billion of selling, which happened in the month of March. If you look at for the month of April, FIs are coming back. FIs are slowly and steadily coming back. And remember, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, it's FIIs who drive the Indian equity markets. Their ownership increases in the Indian markets, the markets are going to zoom. And if the Indian equities go down, it's only because the FIs are selling. So long short, what I'm trying to say is it's only going to be the liquidity and earnings of these quality companies which will drive the markets. Rest broader markets may not experience the similar kind of rally. Manish, you want to add anything in here?
So, no, I think, Manish, I will ask you another question. I will ask the next question, which in these days no interaction is complete without. So, what are the sectors that you think Manish will do well / not do well in the coming 1 year, 3 year, or 5 year, whatever time horizon you want to take? So, over to you.
So, I think an economy like India, right, when you look at the demographics that we have, almost 17-18% of the overall population of the world resides over here. It's a huge market from that perspective. And, the average age of the population is less than 30 years. We have a fairly high literacy rate now today as compared to 3, maybe 4 decades back. Almost 70-74% of the population is at least standard 8 educated. And yet our per capita GDP number stands at $2,000, right? And my sense is that India is going to continue to remain a growth economy in the world in the next 10 years to come. Now, you might debate on the sustainable rate of growth for the Indian GDP. Some people might perceive it to be 3%, others might perceive it to be 7%, which is fine and which is fair. But the fact is, we are going to remain a growth economy, and as long as we continue to grow, this $2,000 per capita GDP number is going to continue to move up, and that essentially means consumption is going to remain in favor. Remember, not consumer, but overall consumption is going to continue to remain in favor. So we believe that B2C businesses have done well in the last, say, 15-16 years, and B2C businesses are going to continue to do well over the next 10 to 15 years. And now they are going to be structurally growing. It could be financials, which are more retail facing. It could be discretionary consumption. It could be healthcare. It could be FMCG. But overall, we do believe that amongst all these sectors, B2C businesses and consumption businesses are going to continue to remain, in flavor for at least next 5 to 10 years.
So, can you speak a little bit about financials and BFSI, because that it was 30 to 40% of the index, and ignoring and not talking about that part will be injustice. So, a little bit on BFSI.
Siddharth, you want to do that?
Okay. So, our thought process is that as in every sector, there will be new leaders which will emerge in the BFSI. Similarly, there will be a lot of casualty which you will see in the BFSI sector as well. In BFSI, guys who have been prudent, the guys who have been managing their liability book. So let me give you a simple understanding of financial sector. And this I learned almost 22 years back when I started my career, and I was in the debt side of on the merchant banking side. And my senior just told me one thing. Remember, Siddharth, that in credit, it's very, very important that you should always go long. You should always go long on liabilities. You should always go short on assets. But if you look at across the spectrum of BFSI, everybody has been going long on the asset book whilst short on the liabilities. And that's what has hurt. So today, whatever fiasco you are seeing in the mutual fund industry, whatever you are seeing, accidents which happened in 2018 or 2019, they are all thanks to this basic philosophy. So what is needed? In a country like India, where the fiscal deficit is relatively high, so if I put state, center, and local government, all three together, the fiscal deficit is going to be closer to 10 odd percent. Now we are a fiscally starved country. At the same time, the rate of consumption or the rate of expenditure is growing at a higher proportion as compared to the rate in which your income generation is happening. So basically your expenses are larger than your income, and this is across segment, barring an elite 1 to 0.5% where the income is higher than the expenditure. Rest everywhere you will see that the expenses are increasing at a faster pace than the income. So there are enough and more people who are wanting to borrow money. So you open a lending shop and people will just queue up. The challenge is only twofold. First, you have to make sure that the liability book is managed, because if your liability book is long and if it is consistent, then during tough times, what we are seeing today, or what happened immediately after the ILFS accident, or whatever happened after the DHFL accident, you will not be starved of capital. So that's one portion. The second is you have to make sure that the lending norms and the lending credibility, you have the local understanding to whom you're lending, how you're lending, and that's how winners will emerge. So our thought process is in the BFSI, there'll be a lot of rejuggling which will happen. There are smart guys who will use technology. There are smart guys who will understand the behavioral pattern of the borrower. Those guys will emerge as winners. But rest of them who have been prudent with the liability book, who have been very conservative with their lending, those guys will emerge as a winner. And across our portfolios, whether it is Coffee Can, whether it is Good and Clean mid cap, or whether it is Emerging Giant small cap, we have some of the highest quality BFSI names, because we have seen that during tough times, they have sufficient supply of money or the liability book on their side. So our reckoning is that the tail is going to get impacted worst. There will be a whole bunch of guys who will remain largely resilient because of their good management, because of their technology, because of their people, because of their lending norms, and specifically because they manage their liabilities very, very well. I'm reiterating, liabilities is the key, not the asset growth.
So that's a very detailed answer, Siddharth. Thank you. So since you spoke about the other two portfolios, the next question that we will take is about the other two portfolios of Emerging Giants and Good and Clean. So a little bit on those two, please. Any one of you.
So Manish, you want to take?
Yeah. So we have three philosophies, right? Which is basically Coffee Can, Good and Clean, and Emerging Giants. They are all essentially following the same path, which is to invest in good companies, which is to invest in very, very high quality names, but very different from each other also in many respects. Coffee Can is largely a large cap oriented scheme, right? So the average market cap of a Coffee Can portfolio will be upwards of 120, 130, 1,30,000 crores. But when you look at Good and Clean, it's by and large a mid cap oriented portfolio, which is more opportunistic in nature. It's more actively managed, right? The churn is slightly higher over there, probably closer to 15 to 20%. Coffee Can is closer to 5%. And we get in and out of positions with a view of 3-year or 4-year in Good and Clean, as compared to Coffee Can, where we take a straight away 10-15-year view. But we've always generated a very significant double-digit alpha over the market over a sustained period of 5 years. Good and Clean started before Coffee Can. It's a 5-year-old portfolio. Coffee Can is about a 3-year-old portfolio, and has done remarkably well. Our baby of the AMC is the Emerging Giants, which is roughly about 2 years and a few months old. It started off in December 2017 and has done remarkably well, given that it's a small cap oriented scheme, 100% small cap, 100% attention towards trying to find out the next Coffee Can companies over the last 10-year period. And they have their own framework, the framework which Good and Clean and Emerging Giant, share is more focused on generation of cash and reinvestment of cash, and the accounting policies that these companies face, and the ability of these companies to consistently grow at a certain pace over the next 6 to 10 years to become mid cap to large cap and small cap to mid cap. while Coffee Can is more about consistency. So that's essentially in a nutshell all the three schemes that we have.
Okay, so now thank you, Manish, for that. We will take the last question, which is a two-part question. So any one of you can answer this again. So the question is, what is your advice to an investor right now? And the second part of the question is interesting. How can you help someone who wants to start investing in either of the three philosophies but doesn't want to commit 50 lakhs at one go, since your product is on the PMS platform? So this is something that the audience wants to know. Over to you guys.
So Manish, do you want to answer the first one and then I'll answer the second one?
Sure. So, sorry, can you just repeat the question again, the first one?
So the first one is, it's a broad question, advice to investors on debt, equity, and since today we are amidst a debt fiasco, how should people look at debt? So that, and what can you, how can you help someone who doesn't want to commit 50 lakhs at one go? These are the questions.
Sure. So, the investment is probably one of the simplest of the things that you can do, and it's also probably one of the most difficult things that you can do, because it's just so difficult to stick to a certain amount of discipline, right? Like Siddharth said earlier, that if you're going to be investing in debt markets and the yields are falling across the board, and yet somebody is continuing to give you a certain return in a debt mutual fund or a debt scheme, then you've got to be, thinking of it as a red flag, that there's something inherently which is wrong, right? He's probably, the quality is deteriorating or something is amiss over there. That itself should be a signal for you to pull it out of it. So my only advice to people is that your asset allocation should be driven by the purpose of investing, right? This is something that I'm going to be, saying again and again, and you'll keep hearing about it. But, that's very important, because the point is, PPF, for example, is a great investment asset, right? It gives you a compounded return of anywhere between 8 to 9% over a 16-year time frame. But if you invest your liquid money in PPF and you need it in an emergency, is that return of any use to you? No, right? So the point is, are you doing retirement planning? Are you looking to invest, from a generational wealth transfer perspective? Is it for your education of your children? I mean, what essentially are you looking to invest for? That should be the primary area which should, thought process which should determine your asset allocation, right? I mean that's essentially what I would advise to people. Otherwise, have a balanced investment in probably between debt to equity, have 70-30 balance investment between large cap and mid caps. Small cap you can invest if you have the risk appetite for it. It's a very high risk, high return in game. So be cautious about it, but just be mindful of what the purpose of investment is.
Thank you. Now, Siddharth.
Yeah. So very, very simple thumb rule here. Again, you are seeing that the yields are falling, right? The debt yields are falling. RBI has cut the interest rates, and there is an expectation that the rates are going to cut down even further. So what you should essentially look at is very, very simple thumb rule. 3 years money, protect it. 3 years your expenses, you need to protect them anyhow. And you have to ensure that those monies are kept with complete safety. The balanced portfolio, if you have the appetite, take risk, and you can invest in Coffee Can and you will see the results. But 3 years money at any given point in time, you have to ensure that it remains in very, very secure debt at any given point in time, whether the markets are buoyant, whether the markets are negative, whether the markets are good, whether the markets are bad, whether the pandemic is there, whether the pandemic is not there. Very, very important. 3 years money has to be in very safe assets. So that's one thing. Coming on to your second question, the kind of businesses and how can you find these businesses? Very, very simple.
No. The second question was, if someone is not, wanting or willing to commit 50 lakhs at one go, how can Ambit probably help them in their investment journey?
I'm giving you the mantra. That's what I was.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt then.
You don't have to even come to Ambit. What you need to do is very, very simple. Just look at 3 characteristics. Just 3 characteristics, and that's the summation of the total thing. First, it has to be a B2C company. B2C company essentially means it has to have a very strong brand, and it has to be lowest in the value chain of you consuming it. So lowest in the value chain means the smallest ticket item which you will be consuming. So B2C, but the smallest in the value chain. So that's one. Second thing, what you should do is look at if there is any leverage of any kind. If there is any leverage, just exclude altogether. The reason why I'm not saying that you can yourself do the filters of the coffee can, which is 10-year revenue growth for a last 20-year period, or at least 18 out of 20-year period, and an ROC for the ROC greater than 15% for the similar period, because it may be difficult for you to articulate, and people who do not have financial background may not be able to understand the ROCs and the revenue growth and the sales growth and so on and so forth. Hence, just look at these 3 simple things. One is B2C, which is the lowest ticket consumption item. The second thing is you have to have a dominant market share. So the biggest guy in the market, that's the second thing you should look at. And the third thing is that you have to be not leveraged. If you just stick with this criteria, if you just stick with these very basic, just these 3 criteria, there is a huge probability that you will make your returns in double digits. There's a huge probability, and high teens, double digits. But you have to remain invested. You have to remain put for a longer period of time. And you don't need Ambit. You don't need any advisor. You don't need anyone. Just keep looking at these 3 numbers on a consistent basis. If these numbers start changing, time to exit. Absolutely time to exit.
Okay. Thank you so much, Siddharth. Thank you so much, Manish. Thank you so much to all the participants for tuning in, and I think this was a great webinar. And also the questions that we could not take, I think you can email it to us, and Siddharth and Manish will be happy to take them.
100%. We are very happy, because our thought process is that we want to educate people. If you want to buy Coffee Can, we are more than happy. If you want to buy Ambit Good and Clean, we are more than happy. But if you are not wanting to buy, even if you just want to seek our advice, we are more than happy, because our thought process is education is the best service to the nation, and that's what we can do. So thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you. To know more about the Ambit portfolios, do visit us at PMSCI World, and hoping to see you all in our further series of webinars. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.